Five Nights at Freddy's is a series with admittedly very few known characters. There's the Aftons, the Emilys, and we know some of the names of William's victims, but that's pretty much it until Security Breach, and even then we get like 3 new named characters. It's because of this and other solid evidence that many people assume that we play as Michael Afton in pretty much every FNAF game, and that does make the most sense in my opinion. He is the main protagonist of the series, a tragic character with a knowable backstory that rises against the evil of his father, a tale as old as time. But what if I put forward that Michael wasn't the only protagonist? Instead, there's been someone lurking in the shadows since the beginning, hunting down William Afton, protecting the children at all costs, and sometimes even helping Michael Afton. Well, that's what we're here today to discuss. So slices, put on your aprons, and let's bake ourselves a theory. So who is this mystery person? Well, I believe it to be Charlotte Emily, and before we begin to speculate anything, we really should go over everything we definitively know about this person. Any canon information about Charlotte, which admittedly outside of FNAF 6 there isn't much. But that game does give us some information that we can work with to learn even more about her. So what do I mean by this? The first time Charlotte Emily is directly referenced in-game is Freddy Fazbear Pizzeria Simulator, or FNAF 6, where the unnamed man that communicates to us via cassette tapes mentions his daughter was killed by William Afton. Now we'll go into the books and what they tell us later on, but for the sake of clarity and so I don't sound like a robot, it's worthwhile to note that most people believe this pair of characters are named Henry Emily and Charlotte Emily respectively, based off of the characters from the books who share a similar role. Charlotte's name, or Charlie for short, as far as I'm aware, has never once been actually in any game. The characters in a few of the games, most of them actually, but as far as her name goes, it's never specified, outside of the novels. Henry is a bit loose, where like, you could speculate that the log titled HRY223 means Henry 2023, but it's unclear. But for ease, I'll be referring to her as Charlotte Emily or Charlie moving forward. Again, we don't get much information about Charlotte in this game, but we do get reiterations and confirmations of previous speculations of the character. This game confirms that she was the character killed in Give Cake to the Children outside of a Fazbear restaurant. And then we get the huge bombshell, and this is the main piece of information we get in FNAF 6, essentially confirming that Charlotte possesses the Marionette after she dies. And while she is the Marionette, she shepherds and helps the other lost souls in this franchise. So although this game doesn't tell us too much directly about who Charlotte Emily is, telling us that she possesses the Marionette allows us to then get more information about what she does if we look at what the puppet does throughout the rest of this franchise. So let's do that. Like I mentioned, Charlotte Emily is killed outside of a Fazbear restaurant that the security puppet was inside of. However, it's not definitive as to what Fazbear restaurant she was killed outside of. We don't know where the security puppet was originally slated to go. Some argue it has to be Freddy's because Fredbear's never had any signs of a marionette, so a puppet being inside Fredbear's doesn't make much sense, but that is speculation. Others argue that it has to be Fredbear's because the only meaningful shot we get inside the restaurant is a bear inside of a fairly sparse restaurant. The same basic layout we see in the daytime minigames of FNAF 4, which we know are at Fredbear's. And not to mention, in the books, Charlotte is kidnapped and killed within Fredbear's family diner. The book evidence is fairly solid, and I don't have a huge counter-argument against it. I do have a problem, however, with the layout design argument, being that this art style is intentionally simplistic. We get barely any details of the layout or look of the building with this shot. This looks like almost nothing, so I don't find it very compelling to say, oh, well, it looks like the same almost nothing as FNAF 4 and FNAF 6. In the same vein, should we presume that because of Foxy Go Go Go, the MCI actually happened between 2 rooms that have no exits? Now, I do personally lean for the location being Freddy's, mainly because I don't believe the puppet was at Fredbear's, but also I think it would make a lot of sense that she would remain at the place she was killed. And why does that matter for this argument? Because the next thing we know is that the Marionette helped the kids from the missing child incident to possess the original animatronics. Henry implies this in FNAF 6, and we get further implications from Give Gifts, Give Life, a minigame where we play as the puppet and give animatronic masks and presents to dead kids. We also know for a fact that the missing child incident had to have taken place at Freddy's, not Fredbear's. Not only does it say this directly in FNAF 1, but every other iteration of the missing child incident in the books and the film take place at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. So if Charlotte was around to help the children possess the animatronics after the missing child incident, then she would have been at a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. So if she died at a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, it makes a lot more sense for the reason why she's still around. And again, the location of Charlotte Emily's death is not definitive or confirmed. I just personally think it's most likely to be at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. After all, you could always argue that the puppet was at Fredbear's and that's when Charlotte possessed it, but after Fredbear's shut down, the marionette was moved to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and that's where she encountered the missing child incident. That's perfectly valid. It's just not my personal preference. We also know that she was trying to stop William Afton during the dead child incident, or the FNAF 2 massacre. Essentially, FNAF 2 shows us a minigame called Save Them, where we are Freddy being led by the puppet, and there's several dead bodies strewn about the FNAF 2 location. Eventually, we encounter William Afton, who attacks us, and we get the text, "You can't." During that minigame, we're being led by the marionette, so ostensibly, Charlotte knew what was going on when William was killing the kids at FNAF 2 and tried her best to stop us. We also know that she was at FNAF 3, and while her motives are unclear, there's a pretty good speculation as to why. There are frames you can get in the cameras that show the marionette in this hallway, and specifically the marionette with a reflection in the puddle below, implying that she's not a phantom puppet like we see in The Office. Now, again, we don't know why Charlotte is here, but it's a pretty safe assumption that she's looking for William Afton, just like Michael is. In FNAF 2, we get these in-between night cutscenes of the FNAF 1 animatronics looking amongst themselves from the perspective of Freddy, and on one of the nights, the puppet is in our face for the entire night. Many people, myself included, believe these minigames are dreams that Michael Afton is having. However, as we'll get into later, it's been confirmed in the FNAF world, at least in the books, that when a spirit is trying to reach out to somebody, they often implant memories and mess with their dreams. So it's very possible, if not likely, that these dreams are being imparted onto Michael by one of the missing child incident kids, possibly Charlotte, or possibly even Gabriel, the boy who is suspected to be inside of Freddy. Honestly, that makes a lot of sense to be that spirit, considering the main mechanic in FNAF 2 is putting on a Freddy mask. I wonder if that's why Gabriel is reaching out, if he is the one that is. I never thought about that before. Finally, and what I believe to be the most interesting thing about the marionette, the ultimate custom night death lines. In UCN, when most animatronics kill you, you get a random of like 4 or 5 different quotes from that animatronic. And keep in mind, Ultimate Custom Night is ostensibly created by the vengeful spirit. It's not a real place, and these aren't real animatronics, so the death quotes are often just reflections of what the vengeful spirit is thinking. However, we know the vengeful spirit absolutely hates William Afton, and all of these death lines have some kind of vibe to them, which makes the Marionette's voice lines very interesting.
The others are under my protection. The others are like animals, but I am very aware. I recognize you, but I'm not afraid of you. Not anymore. I don't hate you, but you need to stay out of my way.
I think the ones specifically of note are the ones where she has to protect the others, and that the others are like animals, but she is very aware. This could just be a reflection of her role throughout the series, spoken by the vengeful spirit, but this also could be telling us that the marionette in this circumstance isn't actually being created by the vengeful spirit, but is instead checking in on both of them. Is the marionette one of the few actual spirits in this area? Further backing this up are the other 2 death lines. I recognize you, but I'm not afraid of you, not anymore, and specifically, I don't hate you, but you need to stay out of my way. Again, the vengeful spirit definitely hates William Afton, so this voice line seems fairly merciful, something that Charlotte would be likely to say. But pay attention to that last bit, you need to stay out of my way. That would imply she's trying to actively do something during the time of Ultimate Custom Night, which again, feels very present and in the moment, not something that the vengeful spirit would be saying to William Afton, especially not from the perspective of the vengeful spirit, because again, the whole reason Ultimate Custom Night is happening is to torture William, not to keep him out of the way. And that's pretty much everything we learn about the Marionette and Charlotte in the games. So what do we know about her from the books? Well, honestly, for the purposes of this video, not much. Again, we do get her name and the name of her father in the books, which is incredibly important, but the entire Silver Eyes novel trilogy focuses on the story of Charlie growing up and eventually facing off and killing William Afton, losing her own life in the process. But again, That story focuses on the robotic recreation of Charlotte Emily made by Henry Emily after she's killed by William Afton, something that, as far as we're aware, has no evidence of happening inside the games. It's realistically a completely separate character, and what she does in the novel isn't necessarily helpful in knowing what she would do in the games. For example, in the novels, Charlotte loves robotics and is studying them at a collegiate level, which is really interesting now that she's following in Henry Emily's footsteps, but she's doing that in college, and in the games, she dies at like 5 years old or something. Ostensibly, all we know is that before she was killed, she was just a normal kid. So what other information can we add to the ingredient list of this theory? I think it's relevant to bring up some notes about remnant, memories, and how they operate in the FNAF world. Mark doesn't though. Sticking with the Silver Eyes for the moment, in the fourth closet, the third book, Remnant is of central focus. When the character Carlton has Remnant injected into his heart, he goes fully unconscious, but instead of dying, his unconscious mind enters this sort of transient spiritual state, and he's able to see a child from the missing child incident. In this room, there are also floating pieces of paper that turn out to be ripped up drawings, and he helps that child's spirit collect these pieces and put them together. Each time they put a picture together, one of the spirits from the missing child incident reappears. All of this seems to be implying that these scraps of drawings are pockets of remnant that Carlton and the other spirits can visualize and see in this weird spiritual realm. And when they collect enough remnant of one drawing or of the same kind, then that child is able to rematerialize in this spiritual space, getting some of their memories back in the process. And only when all of that remnant is collected and sorted is Carlton able to show them that William Afton is the one who killed them, giving their memories back to them. Because before then, they couldn't even remember that they were dead. They were just playing at the pizza place with their friend Rabbit. Another story doubles down on this idea of memories and the afterlife. Alone Together, one of the Tales in the Pizzaplex stories, follows a boy named Travis trying to figure out why a ghost keeps haunting him to create this box, until eventually he finds out the ghost boy was him. It was his memories that he was reaching out to because he is dead. But once he finds his remains, all of his memories come flooding back to him, and he suddenly remembers that he is dead, he is a ghost, and the grandma who talked to him is also a ghost. And suddenly he feels much more at peace. The book itself explicitly states, quote, "Most ghosts linger around the place they died, especially if their remains are undiscovered. They travel around the places that are familiar to them," which feels like as explicit as this franchise ever gets for how ghosts and the missing child incident could work in this world. This would explain why the missing child incident spirits are so lost and wandering, but Charlotte isn't. Her body is discovered immediately. She was left in the street. So with all of this in mind, what does Charlotte do in the FNAF story? What makes me so certain that she is as much of a protagonist as Michael Afton? Well, let's pop our mixture into the oven and see what kind of horrors rise. For one reason or another, and I have my own thoughts on this, but it's not for today's theory, William Afton kills Charlotte Emily outside of a Fazbear restaurant. The security puppet meant to watch over the children arrives too late and she's already dead. But due to the rain, by the time it gets to her, it collapses onto her. It's in this moment where Charlotte possesses the Marionette. And even though her body is found, she remains at the pizzeria out of fear and confusion. Alone Together never states that a ghost has to move on when their remains are found. It only specifies that it's difficult for a ghost to move on without it. After all, Travis's grandmother sticks around just to watch over Travis and watch her friends as they slowly join her. Charlotte most likely sticks around because she's just a kid. Sure, she might know that William Afton killed her, but from her perspective, she has no idea why her dad's friend would have done that to her, or what's going on now, and she probably just wants to see her father again. But as she remains at Freddy Fazbear's, something goes horribly wrong. One day, two children appear at the pizza place, but they're children that can see her. No one should be able to see or talk to her, but they do. She asks them if they've been killed as well, but they don't know what she's talking about. They're just here to play at Freddy's. So she worriedly keeps an eye on William Afton. Maybe he's doing it again. And sure enough, she sees him do it 3 more times to 3 more children, killing them and stuffing their bodies into animatronic suits. And soon after, 3 more spirits join them at the pizza place. Charlotte tries to break the news to these ghosts, but they're incredulous. Why would they be dead? They're playing at the pizza place. That doesn't make any sense. So she goes to prove it to them the only way she knows how, showing those spirits their remains in the animatronics. And once the kids see their own bodies, all of their memories come back. They know what's going on and what happened. But before before they can do anything about it, Freddy Fazbear's closes down. A while after, the FNAF 2 location opens up. The original suits are old and smelly and stinky and not really good for, using at a kid's place. So they're only used for parts at this point for the new animatronics, the toys. But when those workers took pieces from the original suits to use to repair the toys, they fragmented the spirits bound to the animatronics. One by one, the clear identities of these spirits split apart, and all that were left were aggressive beasts. This is why the withered suits and the toys are so aggressive. Neither half are sure what's going on.
The others are like animals, but I am very aware.
Luckily, they're only aggressive towards adults, and the children seem fine, but not for long. William commits the Dead Child incident, or as I referred to it earlier, the FNAF 2 massacre. In the minigame Save Them, there are several dead children strewn about the FNAF 2 location, and William Afton is just killing children and leaving them in the rooms he killed them. Charlotte wants to stop him but doesn't know how, and tries to get help from Freddy, but he's too fragmented, he's not sure what's going on, so Charlotte has to lead him to William, but when they both get there, it's ineffective and William wins that fight. Luckily, since the bodies were left in the open, the children William killed move on, but the FNAF 2 location closes, and the toys are scrapped. Charlotte can't figure out where they've gone, and now half of these souls are just missing, but she at least remains with the original cast to try to snap them out of it. After all, the Marionette isn't a toy, so she's able to remain with the original suits. But even with all of this effort, it's hard to get them to remember anything. With the toys gone, the pieces aren't in place anymore. Eventually, FNAF 1 opens up, and Charlotte is still trying to coax some kind of memory out of those children, but they just, again, mindlessly attack adults. They even lash out at Michael Afton, but Charlotte doesn't. She doesn't recognize him as a threat, and luckily, he's fired before he can disassemble any animatronics, so he doesn't become a threat. But then William shows up again. William, however, remembers what happened at the FNAF 2 location. It's why he's showing up again. Somehow those animatronics recognized him and tried to defend the children from him. You would want to study the animatronics this time, and he would need to blend in to do so. As much as he would prefer the old Spring Bonnie suit, it would need some serious renovation to be safe to get inside of. So for now, he goes to the back room and finds any other remaining animatronics, and finds his old purple Freddy suit. He puts it on, and he leads them into the same safe room, disassembling them one by one. Quick aside, I know the purple Freddy in Follow Me being William wearing a suit is a bit of a stretch, I get it. But I think this train of logic, paired with the Shadow Freddy suit from the film, and the mention in the same game, FNAF 3, of irrelevant costumes being used after the Springlock suits, and all the other examples we've had of different characters having animatronic suits in the books, I think it's plausible, okay? I get it, it's weird, I think it's plausible. Charlotte tries, but she's ultimately helpless to stop William. However, eventually the spirits stop William themselves, led by the vengeful spirit. Now that the suits had been broken and scattered apart in the same place, there wasn't anything to attach them or anchor them. And in that weird semi-transient state, they were able to focus enough to get William killed. And it's here we see the FNAF 3 Happiest Day minigame. Charlotte tries once again to reach out to these lost souls, and in this state, they don't have all of their memories, but they're at least able to be found, and Charlotte reminds them as much as she can about what happened, eventually leading to a time where they can all move on. However, just like the character encyclopedia states, Charlotte recognizes that William is not gone yet, and she stays around to keep an eye on him. She continues to follow him even when he's taken and put into FNAF 3, trying anything to stop him, but is ultimately unsuccessful, and eventually she's captured by Lefty for the Freddy Fazbear Pizzeria Simulator. While there, her along with everyone else are burnt to the ground, and in that moment of fluidity and uncertainty, Charlotte once again goes for William. But once again, it's being handled by the vengeful spirit, but that is perfect.
I don't hate you, but you need to stay out of my way.
With William occupied, Charlotte realizes the rest of the souls of the missing child incident are here. The missing pieces have finally been found. Them, along with everyone else at this fire, need help moving on, and Charlotte's already done it before. So it's here where, with her previous experience and seeing what the vengeful spirit is able to create, she creates FNAF World, a little purgatory of her own, a place to help the wayward souls of the franchise find rest, and move on. But as far as what happens to Charlotte after that, I'm saving that for a dedicated video of the FNAF 6 fire and its aftermath. So for now, what do you think of my interpretation of what Charlotte does in the FNAF timeline? At least the first half. I feel like even if you disagree with the majority of this, it's agreeable enough and logical enough that it's still a pretty valid timeline. And her being so involved in this franchise and trying to take down William, I think earns her the title of Secret Protagonist. But what do you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. In the meantime, if you want to know what other lore the Silver Eyes novels give us, I actually made a full dedicated video about it last week, so you can go and watch that. If you want your fan art featured on the channel, make sure to use #RyTart. A huge shout out to the best channel members, the Dough Risers, and until next time, as always, stay toasty, slices.